What would you do if you saw a middle-aged woman slap a 68-year-old elderly lady in the middle of an airport parking lot? Shout? Record a video? Or stay silent to avoid getting involved? But what if that elderly lady was a retired homicide lieutenant with nearly 30 years of experience? This story isn't just a small conflict between the young and the old. It's a wake-up call about how we treat each other in public, about power, prejudice, apathy, and the price we pay when we rush to judge someone just because they move a little slower than us. Her name was Sophia, 68 years old. Her hair was silver but always neatly tied back. A wooden cane had accompanied her for years since her knees began to betray her. And her presence unmistakable, calm, sharp, and extremely dangerous to bullies who prey on the vulnerable. That day, she was simply catching a flight back from Seattle to have lunch with her grandson. Nothing special, just an ordinary lunch, clear skies, gentle sunlight, and everything seemed destined to end with a hug, a warm meal, and a cup of jasmine tea. Until a woman stepped out of a white SUV, approached with hurried steps, eyes full of hostility, and then a slap struck straight across the face of the woman who had just gotten off the plane. No one expected that slap would go viral nationwide, appear on TV, flood social media, and turn the life of the woman who slapped upside down forever. But before we get to that shocking conclusion, let's go back to the beginning. Let me tell you, in detail, from the flight to the parking lot, and the price of a foolish act committed in broad daylight. Are you ready? This story begins with a suitcase, a wooden cane, and an elderly woman who doesn't take kindly to being bullied. That morning, everything began so normally it made us complacent. I was visiting my grandma. Grandma Sophia, 68 years old, living over an hour's drive from the city. A retired homicide lieutenant, she had been out of the force for nearly 10 years, but still carried herself with the calm, measured, and blunt demeanor that made many people tread carefully around her. But to me, she was still the kindest person I knew. The one who taught me how to brew tea, how to scan a room with just your eyes, and how to stay calm in situations that seemed out of control. She refused to let anyone pick her up from the airport. "I can still get around on my own," she said. "When I can't, I'll let you know." So I decided to surprise her by picking her up anyway. I knew she had just returned from a conference for retired investigators in Seattle, and I had a strange gut feeling that today she shouldn't be alone. I parked on Level 2, Area A of the airport's parking lot, the section designated for picking up arriving passengers. Right at the scheduled landing time, I spotted her from a distance, small frame but steady steps, pulling a small suitcase with her left hand and holding her cane in her right. Still the same round wooden cane with a silver handle, a retirement gift from her former captain. "You don't need a taxi?" I asked as I walked up to her. "Taxi? No way, sweetheart," she chuckled. "I need to stretch my legs a bit after sitting for hours on that plane." We laughed and started walking toward the car. The midday sun was rather intense, and while the walk from the terminal to the parking lot wasn't long, for an elderly person, it wasn't exactly easy. I offered to bring the car around to pick her up at the curb, but she refused. "I may be old, but I'm not crippled," she said, with a look that was both stern and playful. And so we walked, chatting about little things. Her flight, the conference, the neighbor who just sold their house. No one could have guessed that those slow steps would lead to a confrontation that would shake the internet. At the time, I didn't pay much attention, but in the far corner of the parking lot, a shiny white SUV had just pulled in. It was moving pretty fast. Too fast for a pedestrian-heavy area like this one. I only noticed the headlights flash briefly before switching off, like the driver was growing impatient. But I had no idea that within minutes, the woman inside that SUV would become the center of a storm. Not because of her luxury looks, but because of the slap she was about to deliver to a 68-year-old woman who had spent 3 decades upholding justice. No one could have predicted a peaceful day would be ripped apart by one small, cruel act. And the most bitter part? It all began not because anyone did something wrong, but simply because an elderly woman was walking a bit too slowly. The international airport parking lot at midday is usually bustling, but that day, it became the stage for a confrontation no one saw coming. My grandmother, Sophia, 68 years old, and I had just left the terminal, pulling her suitcase, preparing to cross the lot back to our small family sedan. She absolutely refused to let me go get the car first, even though the sun was blazing. "My legs still work, just slower than before," she smiled. Step by step, slow but steady, she walked with her familiar wooden cane, her silver hair neatly tied, eyes sharp, and back still straight. Just like in the days she was still on duty. We were walking in the lane between two rows of cars. There were no painted crosswalks, but everyone understood. Pedestrians always have the right of way in this area. And yet, beep. A sharp car horn tore through the quiet air. Startled, I turned around. Behind us was a brand new white SUV, its engine growling like it had the right to tear through the entire airport if it wanted to. Behind the wheel was a figure all too familiar from every Reddit story about a Karen. Blonde curly hair, oversized sunglasses, and a scowling face like the whole world was interrupting her prime time. She rolled down her window, leaned out, and yelled, "Move it. This isn't a damn crosswalk, old lady." I froze. Before I could say anything, my grandmother turned her head back, her eyes calm, and replied in a soft but firm voice, "I'm moving as fast as I can, young lady." That should have been the end of it. A calm, polite response, enough for anyone with a conscience to understand and yield. But no. Karen revved her engine, swerved into the next lane, drove up alongside us, and slammed on the brakes with a screech, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The car door flung open. She stepped out, heels pounding against the pavement, her eyes burning with rage. "I'm so sick of old people like you. Think you're special or something?" Blocking the way during rush hour. I stepped in front of my grandmother. "You don't get to talk like that. This is a parking lot, not a freeway. She's my grandmother, and you're way out of line." Karen shot me a sharp glare. "Don't get involved. You think I'm scared of you?" I clenched my fists but held back. Grandma Sophia gently touched my shoulder, signaling me to step back, then looked straight at Karen. "There's no need to yell. I'm not trying to inconvenience you. We're just walking to our car." Karen snapped. "If you can't walk properly, you should have had someone drive you. Don't crawl around here blocking people." I could feel my blood boiling. But my grandmother just stood there, serene, composed, not the slightest bit shaken. Her cane tapped the ground in a slow, steady rhythm. She had once taken down dangerous criminals in her days as an investigator. Did anyone really think an aggressive woman in a parking lot would make her flinch? Absolutely not. And it was right at that moment the story took a turn. Karen stepped closer, pointed her finger right in my grandmother's face, and hissed, "You're the kind of person holding society back. If you can't keep up, stay off the streets." I shouted, "Back off, that's enough." But it was too late. Karen raised her hand, and in a split second, slapped my grandmother hard across the face. The slap echoed sharply, drawing startled looks from people nearby. My grandmother staggered slightly but remained standing. I nearly lunged at Karen in fury, but Grandma reached out and stopped me, not out of weakness, but to hold back the storm inside me. "Not worth it," she said softly. "I can handle this." And in that moment I realized I wasn't the one protecting her. She was teaching me. Real strength isn't in striking back, it's in being in control of yourself. Karen stood there, breathing heavily, then let out a laugh. "Call the cops, let's see who they believe. Some old lady or me?" Grandma Sophia didn't say a word. She calmly opened her handbag, pulled out a slim black leather wallet, and flipped it open. A police badge appeared. "Lieutenant Sophia Nguyen, retired, 30 years of service in the city homicide division, and you just committed assault on a senior citizen in front of multiple witnesses." Karen froze. My grandmother still stood there, not raising her voice, not threatening, just stating facts. But those facts landed like a ton of bricks. In that very moment, Karen realized she had picked the wrong person to mess with. What happens next will explode. Airport management, the police, and the online community will all get involved. But what about you? A question for you. If it were you witnessing an elderly woman being attacked like that, would you step in or stay silent? Leave a comment. We want to know, would you choose courage or silence? The midday airport parking lot, seemingly peaceful, suddenly felt tense like a stretched wire. After Grandma Sophia calmly responded, "I'm moving as fast as I can, young lady, Karen," The blonde woman with oversized sunglasses and a glare that could scorch refused to back down. She slammed on the gas, swerved into the next lane, and braked hard right beside us. The white SUV loomed, blocking our path like it was claiming absolute right of way, because her business was apparently more important. The door flung open, and Karen stepped out, her high heels hammering the ground like war drums. Her face was flushed, whether from anger or the fact no one moved for her. I couldn't tell. My grandmother still stood firm, hand gripping her cane, eyes calm like the surface of a deep lake. "People like you shouldn't be in places like this," Karen snapped. "If you can't walk faster, stay home and stop getting in everyone's way." I stepped forward, arms spread to block her. "You need to calm down. My grandmother did nothing wrong. This is a parking lot, not a freeway." "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the person who blocked my way." Before she could finish the sentence, Karen suddenly raised her hand. Smack. The sound of the slap cracked through the parking lot like thunder on a clear day. A brutal slap, not at me, but at my grandmother. Her face turned to the side, glasses slipping down to touch her cheek, leaving a long red mark. For a split second, I was paralyzed, my whole body numb, like a jolt of electricity had hit me. I dropped my bag, stepped forward, fists clenched. But before I could do anything reckless, she held out a hand to stop me. So light. So steady. She was still standing. She hadn't fallen. But Karen took a half step back. Maybe she realized she had just crossed a line she couldn't uncross. But even in that shock, she curled her lips into a sneer, as if daring the whole world. "Call the cops," Karen scoffed. "I'll say she threatened me first. You people have no proof." My hands trembled with rage as I pulled out my phone. "You just assaulted a senior citizen, in public, in broad daylight, with dozens of witnesses." Karen burst out laughing like that was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. Who cares? Someone like her should be in a nursing home, not shuffling around a parking lot getting in everyone's way. She said it so coldly, so casually, as if my grandmother's existence was nothing more than an inconvenience. But then, my grandmother did something I didn't even expect. She opened her purse, took out a slim leather wallet, and quietly flipped it open. Inside was her old police badge, worn down from decades of use, but still perfectly legible. "I am Lieutenant Sophia Nguyen, retired from Homicide, District 5, and you just committed assault on an elderly person." Karen went pale. No one laughed, no one doubted. Only silence remained, tense, thin, about to crack like ice under pressure. An airport staffer nearby who had been collecting luggage carts stopped in his tracks, eyes wide. My grandmother turned to him. "Please contact airport management and request that police be called to the scene. There's been an assault on a senior citizen that needs to be handled." The young man immediately grabbed his walkie-talkie and quickly walked toward the terminal building. By now, people had started to gather, some pulling out their phones to record, others murmuring, "I saw it all. That lady totally slapped the old woman." Karen began to lose control. Her eyes darted around in panic and her feet shuffled backward toward her car. Her trembling hand gripped the door as if she could climb inside and disappear from the scene. But it was too late. I stood beside my grandmother, gently holding her hand. "You don't have to do this, Grandma. I can handle it." She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Some things have to be done by the one who was wronged, so people like her understand that no one has the right to belittle others, especially the elderly. Question for you. If you witnessed a senior citizen being assaulted in public, what would you do? Help? Record it? Or walk away? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Next part, the police arrive. Karen faces the truth, and justice begins to take its course. The police arrived in under 10 minutes. 2 patrol cars quietly rolled into the airport parking lot, lights flashing but sirens off. When the 2 officers stepped out, the air felt like it froze. All eyes turned toward them. Then, one of them, a tall man in his 40s, sharp eyes, paused when he saw my grandmother. He walked briskly toward us, his expression shifting from professional to surprised, then to respectful. "Lieutenant Sophia? Is it really you?" My grandmother gave a slight nod. "Yes, Sophia Nguyen. I served in the Homicide Division, District 5. The atmosphere changed immediately. The suspicious looks from the crowd turned into silent reverence. Karen, standing behind us with a defiant look, clearly felt the shift. She took a half step back, her arrogance starting to fade. The officer said sternly, "We received a report of an assault on a senior citizen. Ma'am, can you confirm that this woman attacked you?" "I can confirm," my grandmother replied firmly. "She assaulted me without provocation. There are witnesses and there is camera footage. I request that a report be filed and criminal charges brought for assaulting an elderly person." Karen shot up like a spring. "She's lying. She threatened me first. I was defending myself." A young man nearby, wearing a hoodie and holding a skateboard, raised his phone. "I recorded the whole thing. You slapped her in front of everyone. No one touched you." A middle-aged woman stepped in. "I saw it too. The old lady was just walking, and that woman sped in and started yelling like someone owed her money." Karen looked around at the crowd, now 5, 6 people ready to testify. Panic crept into every breath she took. "This is a misunderstanding. I didn't know she was a cop." "So if I weren't a cop, you'd still slap me?" my grandmother replied coldly. Karen was speechless. One officer approached and told Karen to sit on a bench and not leave the scene. The other officer went with airport security to check the surveillance footage. I stood beside my grandmother, my heart pounding, but not out of fear, out of pride. I had never seen her this resolute, so calm yet sharp that it silenced everyone around her. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to threaten. Her mere presence and her words commanded the entire space. A few minutes later, the officer who reviewed the footage returned, holding a tablet. He nodded to his partner. "The video is clear. Miss Sophia and her companion were walking normally through the parking lot. The accused, Karen, approached and struck first with her right hand. No threatening behavior from the victim. Miss Karen," the officer turned to her, "you are being detained for suspected assault on a senior citizen in a public place. We'll be escorting you to the station for questioning and further investigation." Karen screamed, "I have rights. You can't treat me like this. This is a mistake." But no one responded. The officer handcuffed her and calmly read her Miranda rights. And at that moment, the crowd around us began to clap, not out of cruelty, but because justice had finally been served. I looked over at her, and she simply smiled. Not a victorious smile, but the kind of smile that comes from knowing you did the right thing. And in that moment, I realized I had learned more from that smile than from any moral lesson I'd ever read. Even as the click of handcuffs echoed, she turned to me and said, her voice soft like the wind, "You see, staying silent doesn't mean weakness. Staying calm, standing firm, and letting the truth speak, that's enough." But the story didn't end there. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay on the sofa in her warm little house, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning from everything that had happened. As for Grandma Sophia, the woman who had just been slapped in the middle of an airport parking lot, she seemed completely unfazed. She was as composed as if the slap had just been a minor bump on a breezy day. The next morning, I woke to the familiar clinking in the kitchen. She was pouring coffee, making breakfast like nothing had happened. The red mark was still faintly visible on her cheek, but her eyes were strong, unbothered. I asked if she was feeling tired, and she just chuckled. "Wasting energy on people like her? Not worth it, dear." The landline rang. She picked it up, and just by how she sat up straight, I knew it was an important call. Her voice shifted into serious mode. That tone that once made suspects confess in the interrogation room. "This is retired Lieutenant Sophia speaking." It was a call from an old colleague, now working at the district office. He informed her that Karen, the woman who assaulted her, was now facing multiple charges, including assaulting a senior citizen, disturbing the peace, and potentially more serious charges for verbal abuse and discrimination, pending review of a phone recording after her arrest. I was stunned. "What phone call?" Grandma explained calmly. While being held at the airport, Karen had made a call to a relative and lost control. She had insulted the officers, hurled racial slurs at my grandmother, and screamed that these old people should get the hell off my road. Worse, the call had been recorded, as all calls from high-security areas are legally monitored. My eyes widened. "So that means if the prosecutor agrees, she'll face additional charges," Grandma replied evenly, "and she could end up with probation or mandatory rehabilitation." After hanging up, she sat down at the table, sipped her coffee, then looked at me. "You see, people like her always think they're right. They never recognize the consequences until it shows up at their door. But we don't need to shout or retaliate. We just need to be patient and let the truth speak. I was silent. I thought back to what happened at the airport. The chaos, Karen's contemptuous glare, the sudden slap, and then the way Grandma stood tall, pulled out her old badge, and let it speak for itself. That badge wasn't just her identity. It was the symbol of a lifetime of quiet strength. She didn't want to be famous. She didn't care about social media or being called a senior hero. She just wanted the right thing to be done. And now the system was in motion because of that. What would you have done in my shoes, watching someone you love get attacked and insulted right in front of you? Would you have kept calm like Grandma Sophia? Or jumped into the argument? Leave a comment. I really want to know what you would have done. And that's how one seemingly small act, a slap in a parking lot, triggered a chain of consequences no one saw coming. Sophia didn't need to yell. She didn't need to hit back. She just needed to stand tall, speak clearly, and let the truth do the rest. Karen thought my grandmother was just a slow old woman, an obstacle in her path. But what she ran into was a woman who had once faced down dangerous criminals and never backed down. This story isn't just about justice. It's a reminder. You never know who you're dealing with until you cross the line. If you think this story deserves to be shared, hit like, share it, and leave a comment below. What would you do if you were a witness in a situation like this? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more real, powerful, and emotional stories like this one. See you in the next video.